The room reportedly went silent the moment King Felipe VI changed his expression. Not because he raised his voice. Not because he made some dramatic speech. But because, according to people close to the palace atmosphere, he suddenly stopped looking like a king, and started looking like a father who realized something was slipping out of his control. And honestly, that detail matters more than the headlines. Because over the last 48 hours, people have been obsessing over the public appearance, the military images, the official schedule, the polished palace statements, but I think most people are missing the real story hiding underneath all of it. This wasn't about protocol anymore. This was about fear, not political fear, not royal image fear, fatherly fear, the kind that makes a calm man act stronger than usual because deep down he feels the clock moving faster than he expected. And if you watched Felipe carefully recently, the body language, the timing, the sudden firmness, something changed. Something personal. Now compare that to what's happening around other royal families. While Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, continue presenting stability and controlled family imagery in Britain, Spain's monarchy feels emotionally heavier right now. Less polished, more fragile, almost like everyone inside the palace knows a major transition is approaching faster than planned. And here's my personal take. I don't think Felipe is afraid of losing the throne. I think he's terrified of what the throne could do to his daughter. That's the difference. Because the moment a father realizes the institution he spent his whole life protecting might emotionally consume his child, everything changes. And that's why his recent actions suddenly feel so strong. Now pay attention to this because this is where the story gets deeper. At first, people assumed the increased protection around Leonor, Princess of Asturias, was just standard royal protocol. Future queen, military training, public pressure, normal stuff, but I don't fully buy that explanation anymore. The energy around Leonor lately feels different. Heavier, almost like the palace is trying to protect not only her security, but her emotional endurance. And if you've followed royal history long enough, you know this pattern repeats itself over and over again. The institution always says, duty first. But privately, families break under that pressure all the time. That's the part royal documentaries rarely show. Because behind the uniforms, titles, ceremonies, and cameras, these are still parents watching their children slowly disappear into public expectation. And I think Felipe sees it happening in real time. You can even notice how differently he looks at Leonor now compared to a few years ago. There's more caution, more observation, almost like he's constantly asking himself, is she truly ready for what's coming? And maybe the hardest part for him is this. Leonor probably is ready professionally. That's what makes this story complicated. She speaks well, she handles pressure, she follows protocol better than most people her age ever could. But emotional readiness, that's a completely different war. Because becoming queen is not a promotion. It's a sacrifice. And I honestly believe Felipe knows exactly how lonely that sacrifice becomes. That's why his recent firmness doesn't feel cold to me. It feels protective. A lot of viewers may disagree with me here, but I think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings about powerful fathers in royal families. People assume strength means control. Sometimes strength is panic hidden behind discipline. And I think that's exactly what we're watching now. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Because the deeper you look into this family, the less this feels like a monarchy story, and the more it feels like a father trying to slow down time. Now here's where things get even more interesting. I noticed something most headlines ignored. Whenever Leonor appears publicly lately, the focus immediately shifts toward her future role, her historic responsibility, her future reign. But almost nobody asks the uncomfortable question. What happens to a young woman when every room treats her like a symbol instead of a person? That pressure changes people, slowly, quietly. And honestly, I think Felipe understands that better than anyone because he lived a version of it himself. People forget something important about him. Felipe wasn't born into a normal life either. He spent decades learning how to suppress emotion in public. Smile correctly, stand correctly, speak carefully, trust selectively. That kind of upbringing creates discipline, but it also creates distance. And maybe that's the hidden fear driving him right now. He doesn't want Leonor to lose herself while becoming what Spain expects her to become. That's why I think some of his recent decisions feel more emotional than strategic. Not weaker, more human. And in 2026, audiences can sense authenticity faster than ever. That's why these royal stories keep exploding online. People aren't only watching crowns anymore. They're watching emotional tension, That's the real algorithm now. Even someone like Mr. Beast understands this better than many traditional media outlets. Audiences stay when they feel emotional stakes. And the Spanish monarchy suddenly has very real emotional stakes attached to Leonor's future. That's why every tiny gesture becomes massive online. A glance, a delayed smile, a protective move from Felipe. People analyze everything because deep down they feel something is shifting beneath the surface. And personally, I think the palace knows that too. Which is why their messaging lately feels unusually controlled. Too controlled, honestly. Whenever institutions tighten the narrative that carefully, I always ask myself one question. What are they afraid people might notice? Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's emotional pressure. Maybe it's simply the reality that Leonor's transition into future queen is arriving faster than expected. But whatever it is, Felipe's reactions no longer feel purely institutional. They feel deeply personal, and that changes the entire story. Because when a king acts from political calculation, you can predict the next move. But when a father acts from fear, that becomes unpredictable, that becomes emotional, that becomes dangerous for palace stability because emotion breaks protocol. And I think we've started seeing tiny cracks already. Not dramatic scandals, not explosive chaos, just subtle signs that the emotional cost inside this family may be higher than the public realizes. Now let me say something that might sound controversial. I actually think Felipe's strongest quality right now is not his authority. It's his awareness. He seems painfully aware of what this role can do to a person. That awareness probably makes him more protective than previous generations of royals ever were. Older monarchies often believed emotional suffering was simply part of duty. Endure it, hide it, continue. But modern audiences reject that mentality now. And maybe Felipe rejects it too. That's why his behavior lately feels almost conflicted. He wants Leonor to succeed. But he also wants her to survive the process emotionally. And those two goals don't always align. That's the hidden tragedy of royal succession nobody talks about enough. The institution needs perfection, but perfection slowly exhausts human beings. And Leonor, she's still young enough that people sometimes forget the emotional weight sitting on her shoulders every single day. Imagine knowing your mistakes could become international headlines before you even fully discover who you are as a person. That pressure would distort almost anyone's life. Which brings me back to Felipe's recent actions. The firmness, the sudden intensity, the protective posture. I no longer see those moments as political theater. I see a father trying to build emotional armor around his daughter before the next stage begins. And honestly, that might be the most human royal story Spain has seen in years. Not scandal, not gossip, fear, real fear, the kind parents never fully admit out loud. Because underneath the king, the uniform, the speeches, and the royal image, Felipe is still a father watching his daughter walk toward a life he understands better than anyone. And maybe that's the cruelest part of all. He knows exactly what it costs. So now I want to ask you something. Do you think Felipe is becoming more protective because Leonor is getting stronger? Or because he knows the pressure surrounding her is becoming impossible to stop? That question may decide the future of this entire royal story. And honestly, I think the answer is already starting to show on his face.